Legitimate question for the Minister.
The Honourable Mary Ann Street.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. I rise to speak to the second part of the Social Housing Bill, Reform Bill. Mr Speaker, the Minister asks the question about whether or not the Labour Party supports the handing over of income-related rental subsidies to the third sector, to community sector housing providers. If it were as simple as that, the choice would be easy. Of course they should access that money. Of course they should access on an equal basis the income-related rental subsidy, because they are helping the government in its purpose of finding housing, adequate housing for those who need it. The trouble is, it's not as easy as that, and the Minister is being quite simply ingenuous by suggesting that this is a yes-no choice. Our issue is also about the quantum of money and the expectation that the third sector, the civil society housing sector, will be required to take over the government's responsibility for the provision of housing for those most in need. And at $27 million over 4 years, Minister, $6.75 million a year, that's not going to do it. So sure, give the third sector $27 million over 4 years to improve their capacity, but don't abrogate the government's responsibility as the primary agent available to produce and build the greatest number of affordable houses. This is simply shifting the buck. This is simply privatising a responsibility of government and doing it inadequately. So yes, we're perfectly happy for the third sector to have access to income-related rental subsidies, but that is not all there is to it. We would prefer that the government actually stepped up to its responsibilities instead of waiting 5 years doing nothing about affordable housing until the noise around it became so great that they had to apply one of their noisiest members to it, that they are now scrabbling for anything that might get this monkey off their back. Mr Chairman, I want to speak further about Phil Twyford's amendment, his SOP. And that SOP, Mr Chairman, relates to the part where the provisions, can you find it for me? Oh, yep, here we are. Relates to the provisions in Clause 19. And what Phil Twyford's supplementary order paper seeks to do is move an amendment that says that this ability in Clause 19 of Part 2 for the agency, any agency, to review the housing needs of a tenant, and therefore this is the implementation of the reviewable tenancies part of the policy, should be amended so that it does not apply to the tenancies of tenants with a disability, or tenants aged 65 or over, or tenants with school-aged children. And I want to know from the Minister, who's meant to be there answering some of our questions, why is he not supporting, or is he in fact, is he supporting that supplementary order paper? I bet my bottom dollar he's not, because it's come from Labor. But why is he not then supporting that supplementary order paper, and what is possibly wrong with exempting tenants with a disability, tenants aged 65 and over, or tenants with school-aged children from reviewable tenancies? I've already spoken earlier in Part 1 of this bill, Mr Chairman, about the creation of secure communities families that are secure, that are not threatened by dislocation or the upheaval, Mr.
The
Chairman.
Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Are not threatened by dislocation and the upheaval of moving into the private sector or having the threat of a reviewable tenancy held over them. This is especially important in places where there is inadequate private rental accommodation available, and that's as true in Nelson as it is in Auckland. The quality of rental accommodation is dire. Mr. Chairman, I want to refer to the submission to the Social Services Select Committee on this bill that was made by Hikainga Oranga, the Housing and Health Research Program based in the University of Otago. They say in this submission, Mr. Chairman, that the bill makes several major changes to social housing, which we know, and in this submission they say that they do not support the introduction of reviewable tenancies for all state tenants, which is now what is going to happen with this bill, not the people who were excluded previously, but as my colleague Phil Twyford said earlier, this will now apply to all state tenants. And they say that they don't support it because of
Sorry
the
to
lack
interrupt
of
the
evidence.
Honourable Member. The time has come for me to leave the chair for the dinner break. This debate is interrupted. I shall resume the chair at 7:30.